The sun was setting behind the tall glass windows of the Brooks mansion, turning the sky a soft orange. From the outside, the house looked perfect, large, beautiful, and full of luxury. But inside, the silence felt heavy, like a place where laughter once lived but had slowly died. This was the home of Mr. Daniel Brooks, a billionaire whose life was full of business meetings, phone calls, and travel. He had everything money could buy, but one thing he did not have anymore was peace. Ever since his wife, Elena, passed away 2 years ago, Daniel changed. He used to be warm and kind, but now he walked through the house like a stranger. He spoke less, smiled less, and buried himself in work. He believed that if he stayed busy enough, he would not have to face the pain he kept locked deep inside his chest. He told himself that emotions made him weak, and weakness had no place in his world. But someone else lived in this mansion too, someone much smaller, much more sensitive. Daniel's 10-year-old son, Leo, moved quietly through the house like a shadow. He did not run, laugh, or talk much. He avoided noise. He avoided eye contact. And more than anything, he avoided his father. Their relationship was like two people living on different planets. They were under the same roof, yet miles apart. Every morning, Leo sat alone at the dining table while the maids served his breakfast. Daniel rarely joined. He always had a reason: meeting, urgent call, flight to catch. Leo never complained. He had learned not to expect too much. He only kept his mother's small picture in his pocket, touching it gently whenever he felt lonely. And he felt lonely almost every day. The only person who understood his silent pain was the family maid, Miss Grace. She was calm, patient, and kind. She noticed things Daniel never did, like the way Leo ate slowly when he felt sad, or the way he looked out the window when he missed his mother. Grace never replaced his mother, but she became the only warm voice in the cold mansion. She made sure he ate, finished homework, and slept on time. She knew when he needed space and when he needed someone to listen. Daniel, however, saw Grace as nothing more than staff. He respected her work, but he never imagined how important she had become to Leo. After all, Daniel was hardly home to notice anything. His life was scheduled minute by minute, and emotions had no place on his calendar. But even when Daniel was gone, the mansion always reminded Leo of him: its strict silence, its perfect decoration, its cold air. Everything looked expensive, but nothing felt alive. And nothing ever felt like home. Sometimes at night, Leo would wake up from a bad dream. He would sit on his bed with tears in his eyes, trying not to cry too loudly. He did not want to bother his father. He believed Daniel was too busy, too important, too far away to care about his nightmares. So Leo cried quietly, holding his mother's picture close to his chest. A few times, Grace found him awake. She would sit next to him, gently rubbing his hair, whispering soft words until he fell asleep again. She became the comfort he needed, the warmth he missed. But she never told Daniel, because she knew he believed emotions were a distraction, not something to talk about. One afternoon, Leo sat on the sofa staring at a small wooden box in his hands. His mother had given it to him before she passed away. Leo opened it slowly. Inside was a bracelet, a small letter, and a tiny toy airplane. He touched each item carefully, as if they would break if he touched too hard. The letter was something he never read out loud. It hurt too much. Grace saw him sitting there, tears quietly forming in his eyes, but she didn't speak. She simply placed a soft blanket on his shoulders and walked away, giving him space. She understood his silence better than anyone. Meanwhile, Daniel was in his office on the other side of the world, yelling on a business call. His assistant reminded him that tomorrow was the anniversary of Elena's death, but Daniel quickly brushed it off. "I don't have time for emotional days," he said sharply. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was that he cared too much. The pain was something he didn't know how to face. Back in the mansion, Leo slowly closed the wooden box and wiped his eyes. He knew his father would not come home early. Daniel never did. He always came late, sometimes after dinner, sometimes after Leo was asleep. They barely exchanged more than a few sentences a day. Grace watched the boy from the kitchen door. Her heart hurt for him. She wished Daniel could see what loneliness was doing to his son. But she also knew that Daniel was a broken man himself. Losing Elena destroyed part of him. Grace had seen it. She had seen how he stopped looking at family photos, how he avoided the places Elena loved, how he kept everything inside until he became cold on the outside. Yet, one thing was clear. The mansion was full of wealth, but empty of love. And neither father nor son knew how to change that. But fate was about to do it for them. The next morning in the Brooks mansion began like every other, quiet, slow, and cold. Sunlight entered through the huge windows, but even the bright light could not warm the house. Leo sat alone at the dining table, moving his spoon in his cereal without eating much. The clinking sound of the spoon was the only noise in the entire room. He wasn't hungry. He was thinking about his mother again. Grace walked in softly, her footsteps gentle so she wouldn't startle him. She looked at his untouched food and sighed inside. Leo was always lost in thoughts these days. She wished she could take his sadness away, even for a moment. "Leo, sweetheart," Grace said in her warm voice, "you should eat a little. Your stomach will hurt if you don't." Leo nodded politely, but he didn't take a bite. He kept staring at the cereal like it was something strange he didn't know how to eat. Grace pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "You didn't sleep well again, right?" she asked quietly. Leo didn't answer. Instead, he pressed his lips together, as if saying the truth would make everything worse. Grace didn't force him. She knew children often said more in silence than in words. After a moment, Leo whispered, "I had that dream again." Grace's heart tightened. "The one about your mom?" Leo nodded. He tried to hold back his tears but failed. One small tear dropped on the table. Grace placed her hand gently on his back. "It's okay," she said softly. "Missing your mother is not wrong. She loved you very much." Leo wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I don't remember her voice anymore," he said. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I try, but I can't hear it." Grace felt a deep ache inside her chest. She had never lost a child, but she knew loss. She knew how it felt to search for someone who was no longer there. "I want to remember," Leo whispered. "I want to hear her again." He grabbed his mother's picture from his pocket, holding it tightly, almost afraid someone might take it away. Grace watched him quietly. She saw how much he needed comfort, not from medicine or toys, but from a voice that could guide him out of his loneliness. That afternoon, when Leo finished his homework, he sat in the garden alone. The wind moved the leaves gently, and birds chirped in the distance, but nothing could distract him from the heavy feeling in his heart. Grace observed him from the kitchen window. He was hugging his knees again, the same position he sat in when he was deeply sad. She stepped outside and walked toward him. "Leo," she said, kneeling in front of him, "can you tell me something?" Leo looked up with tired eyes. "What did your mother say to you before you slept at night? Do you remember even a little bit?" Leo thought for a moment. "She used to whisper something, a short line, something soft. But I don't remember the words." Grace nodded slowly. "Do you want to learn it again? Do you want to feel close to her again?" Leo's eyes widened. "But how? She's gone." Grace placed her hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes people go, but their love stays. And sometimes, we just need help finding the words they left behind." Leo stared at her, confused but hopeful. Grace stood up and said, "Come with me." She took him inside the house and led him to a small room where the family kept old things, photo albums, old clothes, and boxes no one had opened in years. Grace had secretly been in this room earlier. She knew something was inside it, something important. At the back of a shelf was a tiny memory card from a camera Daniel used long ago. It was dusty, unused, forgotten. Grace had seen Elena with that camera many times. She guessed it must have something precious inside. She placed the card in an old digital frame, praying silently that it would still work. After a few flickers, the screen lit up. A video appeared. Elena sitting beside a baby Leo, smiling warmly, whispering a soft bedtime line. Leo gasped. His eyes filled instantly. "That's Mom," he said in a shaky voice. Grace put her arm around him as he watched the woman he missed more than anything. Elena's voice was gentle, sweet, and full of love. It made Leo cry, not from sadness alone, but from relief, like finding a missing part of his heart. "Can you teach me that line?" Leo asked, voice trembling. Grace nodded softly. "Yes, sweetheart. I will teach you." From that day on, every evening, Grace and Leo sat in the garden or in his room. She repeated the line slowly, helping him memorize each word. Leo tried, sometimes with tears, sometimes with shaky breath, but he tried every day. Grace never rushed him. She knew healing took time. Leo began writing the line in a small notebook. He kept it hidden, afraid his father might take it away or not approve. Not because Daniel was cruel, but because Leo believed his father didn't understand love anymore. But Grace understood. She watched the boy grow a little stronger each day. She watched him speak the words with more confidence. She watched the sadness in his eyes slowly turn into something softer, something like hope. And she also knew something else. If Daniel ever found out what she was teaching Leo, he might react badly. Not because it was wrong, but because it would remind him of the woman he couldn't bear to remember. Grace kept the lessons a secret, not to hide something bad, but to protect a little boy's healing heart. Little did she know. Daniel would discover it soon. And that discovery would change everything. The next few days in the Brooks mansion moved quietly, but something had changed, only Daniel didn't know it yet. While he remained busy with calls and meetings, Leo and Grace continued their secret evening lessons. Every night, the same soft whispers came from Leo's room or the garden, the same emotional line his mother used to say. Leo was slowly learning it, slowly healing. But secrets do not stay hidden forever. One evening, when Daniel came home late, he noticed something unusual. Leo, who normally slept early, was still awake. The light under his bedroom door was on, and Daniel heard a gentle murmuring inside. It was Grace's voice. Daniel paused. He didn't know why, but something about the soft tone made him uneasy. He opened the door slightly. Before he could step inside, Grace finished the line Leo was repeating, and Leo wiped his tears quickly. Daniel didn't ask anything, didn't enter, but he stood there for a moment with a strange feeling in his chest. Something was happening with his son, something he didn't understand. And the fact that he didn't understand it made him uncomfortable. The next morning, he walked past Leo's room and noticed a small notebook on the bed. It was open, pages filled with handwriting, a child's handwriting. When he took a step inside, Leo suddenly rushed out of nowhere and grabbed the notebook, holding it tightly against his chest. "Don't read it," Leo whispered. Daniel was surprised. Leo rarely raised his voice or reacted strongly. But now he was guarding the notebook like it held something precious. "What is in the notebook?" Daniel asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. It's mine," Leo said, avoiding eye contact. Daniel frowned. Something about his son's behavior bothered him. Why was a notebook such a big secret? What was Leo hiding? And why did Grace's voice always appear behind closed doors? Later that day, Daniel noticed more changes. Leo was waking up earlier, eating better, and sitting outside in the garden more often. These should have been good signs, but to Daniel, they were suspicious. He wasn't used to Leo behaving differently. And deep inside, he feared Leo was growing close to someone else, someone who wasn't him. That evening, while Daniel worked in his home office, he heard gentle talking outside. He stood up and walked toward the garden. Through the glass door, he saw Grace and Leo sitting under a tree. Leo looked emotional again. Grace was wiping his tears with a tissue, speaking softly like a mother. Leo leaned on her shoulder like he trusted her completely. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't understand why seeing this made him angry. Maybe because Grace was doing something he should have done as a father. Maybe because she was stepping into a space Daniel had abandoned. Or maybe because her presence reminded him of Elena, something he avoided thinking about. He turned away before they noticed him. But the image stayed in his mind. The following day, Daniel came down for breakfast earlier than usual. He found Leo writing something in the same notebook again. Daniel watched him quietly. Leo didn't notice his father standing behind him. Leo whispered a few words under his breath, the same soft words Grace was teaching him. Daniel's heart froze for a second. It sounded like Elena's voice. It sounded like the same line she used to say. But Daniel quickly shook off the memory. He didn't like remembering. Remembering hurt too much. "Leo," Daniel said suddenly. Leo jumped. The notebook almost fell from his hands. "You are writing again?" Daniel asked. Leo nodded slowly. "What exactly are you writing every day?" Leo hugged the notebook to his chest again. "Just things." Daniel's voice hardened. "Grace is giving you these lessons." Leo swallowed and looked down. "She's helping me." "Helping you with what?" Daniel asked sharply. Leo's silence said everything. Daniel felt his temper rise, not because Leo did something wrong, but because he was scared. Scared of losing the last connection to his wife. Scared of facing memories he wasn't ready to face. He walked away without saying another word. That afternoon, he asked Grace to meet him in the study. She stood in front of him with calm eyes. "I want to know what you're teaching my son," Daniel said. Grace hesitated for a moment. "Sir, Leo is grieving. I am trying to help him." "I didn't ask for that," Daniel replied. "You are the maid. Your job is not to interfere in emotional matters." Grace looked down respectfully. "Yes, sir." But Daniel noticed something. She didn't apologize. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain. She simply accepted his words, which made him even more confused. Why was she not telling him the truth? What was she hiding? After she left the room, Daniel felt uneasy. He felt like he was losing control. His son was hiding something. Grace was hiding something. And whatever that secret was, it was connected to Elena. He could feel it. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Grace holding Leo's hands. He heard Leo repeating soft words. He heard Elena's voice in those words. Finally, at midnight, Daniel stood up. He needed to know the truth. He needed to see it himself. So he made a decision. He would return home earlier the next day. And he would catch them in the act. He didn't know it yet. But the truth he was about to see would break his cold heart open, in a way he never imagined. The next afternoon, Daniel Brooks returned home earlier than usual. He parked his car quietly in the driveway, his heart pounding in a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Something had changed in the past few days. He could feel it in the air, in the way Leo moved, in the way Grace looked at him when he entered the room. There was a secret in his house, a secret that Daniel had ignored, and now he was determined to uncover it. As he entered the mansion, the silence was heavier than usual. The walls seemed to watch him, waiting. The faint sound of voices came from the garden. He paused. It was Grace and Leo. He hid behind the large curtains of the living room window, careful not to make a sound. What he was about to witness would stay in his memory forever. Under the old oak tree in the backyard, Grace was sitting on the grass. Leo was sitting beside her, clutching his small wooden box that contained memories of his mother. Grace's voice was gentle, calm, and soft, the kind of voice that could heal pain. Daniel's ears caught every word she whispered. "Leo, repeat after me," Grace said. "Say it slowly, say it like you mean it." Leo repeated softly, hesitantly at first. "Mom, I hope you are proud of me." Daniel froze. His heart skipped a beat. That line, it was Elena's voice, her words, her love. Daniel had never spoken them to Leo. He had been too busy, too proud, too afraid to show emotion. And now, here was Grace, teaching his son something that Daniel himself could never give. Tears welled up in Daniel's eyes. He felt a mix of anger, guilt, and awe. How had he missed all of this? How had he abandoned his own child? He had everything money could buy, yet he had failed to give the most important thing, love. Leo continued, repeating the line again and again, each time with a little more confidence. Grace smiled softly, nodding, her eyes full of understanding. She was not just teaching him words. She was teaching him how to grieve, how to remember, and how to heal. She was helping him hold on to the memory of his mother without letting the pain destroy him. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to step out, to call Grace, to take Leo in his arms, but he was frozen. He was afraid. Afraid that seeing this would break the walls he had built around his own heart. Afraid that he had been too late. Then Grace said something Daniel hadn't expected. "Leo, it's okay to miss her. It's okay to cry. It's okay to speak to her even if she's not here. Your love is bigger than the pain." Leo nodded and whispered, "I miss you, Mom." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He realized for the first time how much he had ignored Leo's heart. How much he had failed to be a father. Grace wasn't just a maid. She was a guide, a teacher, a mother figure in the absence of the one who was gone. And she had done this in silence, without asking for recognition or thanks. For a few moments, Daniel simply watched, his eyes moist, his hands trembling. He had never felt so small, so helpless, yet so grateful. Grace turned to Leo and hugged him tightly. Leo hugged her back, burying his face in her shoulder. It was a moment of pure, raw emotion, a moment that Daniel had never shared with his son. Finally, Leo looked up at Grace and whispered, "Thank you, for helping me." Grace smiled softly. "No, sweetheart. Thank your heart for being brave enough to remember her." Daniel could not stay hidden any longer. He stepped forward, his footsteps breaking the soft silence. Grace and Leo turned, surprised to see him standing there. Daniel's face was wet with tears, his eyes red from emotion he had long denied. "Dad?" Leo asked, his voice small and unsure. Daniel knelt down slowly, placing a trembling hand on Leo's shoulder. I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know how much you missed her, how much you needed this. I failed you, Leo. I failed you as a father." Leo looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. You didn't fail me," he said softly. "Grace, she helped me. But I wanted you too." Daniel pulled Leo into a tight hug, holding him as if he would never let go. He buried his face in his son's hair, tasting the tears that Leo couldn't hide. "I am so sorry, son," Daniel whispered. "I should have been here. I should have done this, for you." Grace stood quietly nearby, tears in her eyes. She understood the depth of this moment. She had done her duty, but now she could step back. The bond between father and son was waking up after a long, cold sleep. Daniel looked at Grace and said, his voice choked with emotion, "Thank you, for giving my son something I never could." Grace simply nodded, smiling softly. She had expected nothing. She had only wanted Leo to heal. And now, seeing Daniel realize his mistake, she felt a quiet relief. For the first time in years, Daniel felt warmth in the mansion. It was not the warmth of money, power, or luxury. It was the warmth of family, of love, of connection. He realized that life was not about wealth or work. It was about moments like this, small but powerful, that shaped the heart. That evening, Daniel, Leo, and Grace sat together under the oak tree. The golden sunlight fell on them gently. They repeated Elena's line together, laughed softly, and cried softly. Daniel held Leo's hand, and Leo held his father's hand back. Grace watched, knowing her role in their lives had fulfilled its purpose, but also knowing she would always be there to support this fragile, beautiful bond. Daniel finally understood. Wealth could buy comfort, luxury, and protection, but love, true, healing love, could only be nurtured by presence, patience, and care. And for the first time in a long while, he felt whole again. The sun was setting once again over the Brooks mansion, but this evening was different. The house no longer felt cold or empty. For the first time in years, it felt alive, filled with emotion, love, and hope. Daniel Brooks sat under the oak tree with his son, Leo, and Grace beside them. The gentle breeze moved through the leaves, carrying with it a sense of calm and healing. Daniel could hardly believe that just a few days ago, he had been a stranger to his own son's heart. Now, the connection between them was stronger than anything money could buy. Daniel looked at Leo, who was holding his mother's small picture in his hands. "Leo," he said softly, "I want you to know. I will always be here for you. I don't want to miss any more moments. I don't want you to feel alone." Leo's eyes filled with tears. For so long, he had thought his father was too busy, too far away, too distant to care. But now, seeing Daniel kneel beside him, holding his hand, he finally understood that his father's love had never disappeared. It had just been buried under pain and pride. "I missed you, Dad," Leo whispered. "I missed you too, son," Daniel said, pulling him into a tight hug. "More than you can imagine." Grace watched them quietly, a small smile on her face. She had done her part, guiding Leo, helping him remember his mother, teaching him the line that brought peace to his heart. And now, it seemed, her role had expanded. She had become a bridge, connecting father and son, helping them find the love they had lost. Daniel turned to Grace, his voice trembling. "Grace, I don't know how to thank you. You gave my son something I could not. You healed a part of him, and a part of me too." Grace shook her head gently. "You don't need to thank me, sir. I only did what I could. You have the power to love him, to be with him. That is what matters now." Daniel nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. "I promise, Grace. I will never take this for granted again. I will be here for him. I will be a father he can depend on. And I want you to stay with us, not as a maid, but as part of our family. Will you?" Grace's eyes widened, tears forming. She had never expected such words. Yes, sir. I would be honored." Leo jumped with excitement and hugged Grace tightly. "Thank you, Grace. You are the best." Daniel laughed softly, a sound that had been missing from the mansion for far too long. "And you, my boy, are the bravest I know," he said, ruffling Leo's hair. "Brave enough to feel, brave enough to remember, and brave enough to forgive me for not being here sooner." Leo looked up at him, eyes shining. "I forgive you, Dad. I just want us to be together now." Daniel pulled him close again. "Yes, Leo. From now on, we will be together. Always." That evening, Daniel made a small gesture that he had avoided for too long. He lit a candle in front of Elena's picture. The golden flame flickered softly, reflecting in his eyes. He whispered, "I hope you're proud of us, Elena. I will do better. I promise." Leo sat beside him, holding his father's hand, and whispered softly, "I hope so too, Mom." Grace knelt nearby, her heart full. She had witnessed something miraculous, a father awakening to the love he had almost lost, a boy finding comfort and strength, and a bond forming that would never break again. She had done her duty, but now, she knew, the true work of love had only just begun. Days passed, and the mansion changed in small but beautiful ways. Daniel spent mornings with Leo, teaching him small things his mother once loved. They laughed together, played together, and even shared quiet moments reading stories. Leo smiled more often, and his laughter, once rare, echoed through the halls. Daniel also started taking care of himself in ways he had ignored. He spent less time buried in work and more time connecting with life and people he loved. He learned from Grace how to nurture emotions, how to express them without fear. And Grace, in turn, felt proud to see a father awakening, realizing that love is not weakness but strength. One evening, as the family sat together under the oak tree, Leo spoke softly. "Dad, can we keep saying Mom's line together? Every day?" Daniel smiled and nodded. "Yes, son. Every day. We will never forget her, and we will always honor her love." Grace looked at them, tears in her eyes. The boy she had guided was now truly connected to his father. The father she had helped awaken was now fully present. And in that moment, the mansion no longer felt like a house of silence or sorrow. It was a home again, warm, alive, and full of love. Daniel finally understood something he had never known before. Wealth can buy comfort, it can buy luxury, it can even buy power, but it cannot buy love, presence, or healing. Those come only from the heart. And as the golden sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel, Leo, and Grace sat together under the oak tree, holding hands, whispering Elena's lines softly, and feeling the warmth of a family reborn. That night, for the first time in years, the Brooks mansion felt complete.